Hello, everybody from the mighty. My name is Gabe Howard, and I am the intrepid host of the Not Crazy podcast, which has just been like super revamped and changed, and everything moved. And my producer and editor and director and chronic pain in my rear and ex-wife, Lisa, has jumped in front of the microphone, and she is so embarrassed she won't even use her last name. Lisa!
Hi, I'm Lisa. I don't know how to change that. I thought we were just doing first names. I don't know how to change that. Stay tuned for the next time. See what happens. Will I use my last name? I don't know. We'll see.
You specifically told me that you weren't using your last name.
I was hoping to, but then it started looking weird next to yours. So now I don't know where to go with that. I don't know.
I mean, Howard is a classy. It's a classy last name. It's like Rockefeller or Vanderbilt. So here's what we're going to do, mighty fans. Here is all we need from you. In the comments section, type in all of your questions. They can be about bipolar disorder, about anxiety, about depression, about how to manage it, living with it, tips, coping skills, suggestions, anything that you want. And Lisa and I will do our absolute best to answer as many as we can. We have a super awesome... we're going to call her a ghost because she's like behind the scenes.
Oh, does she never show up?
Nope, it's just us. Okay. If I wouldn't have mentioned her, nobody would know she existed, much like you before you jumped on to the Not Crazy podcast.
Oh, I think people knew I was there. The invisible force behind the scenes.
When everything started on time, they knew you were there. They just didn't know you were there. So please drop your questions in the comments. Otherwise, you're just going to listen to this just awkwardness between myself and a woman that, I don't like very much. What do you think? Hang on, Lisa. Okay, I have a question for you.
Okay. I'm ready. Hit me.
This is your first Facebook Live.
It is. Yeah. No pressure. I don't need. Yeah.
And you've decided to do it with your ex-husband.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Okay.
Why?
Again, it is a mystery wrapped in an enigma. That is a good question. I don't know. In retrospect, I probably should have tried a few of these ahead of time. No pressure. Live, first time. Let's go.
What is it with you and the mystery wrapped in an enigma? You also said it on the first episode of our show.
Said it again. See,
you're talking over me. It's one at a time.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't know. Sorry.
This means I'm talking over you, right? You've never backed down from a fight quite this fast. I am just going to tell you that we are on Facebook Live all the time.
With you, we might be.
All right, listen, we're starting to get great people popping in. Deborah Wyatt says, you're there. She also says that Eva says hi. Monica says hello. And we have our first question from Katie Grow. Are you ready to get started, Lisa?
Absolutely. Here we go.
All right, here goes.
Okay, so Katie Grow says, I find that the only thing helpful for my depression and anxiety is distraction and interacting with people in a new situation. I'm really struggling with this since the virus prevents me from being able to do that. Excellent question. Gabe has been finding the same thing.
I love how the answer to the question is Gabe did it.
Well, no, this is something you've been talking about quite a lot. So you're in the same position.
Katie, let me tell you, I quipped at the beginning of all of this that all of my coping skills are now illegal. And I said it in an attempt to be funny, but the longer this has gone on, the more I realize that all of my coping skills are illegal. I can't go to a coffee shop or a local fast food restaurant and get a drink and people watch in the corner or strike up a conversation. I can't find like what are those groups? Those meetup groups. I think they're called meetups. I can't find these meetups. Of course, all of the support groups or just the things that I used to do to distract my mind or to find joy in life, like go to a movie or a concert, all illegal. And of course, it's also impacted my job. As a public speaker, this is as close as I can get to an audience. This is it. I feel that even now I'm violating somebody's personal space.
Is your anxiety and depression resting? Going lower the closer you get to the camera?
It's no, but I have learned through all of this that one, I am much more resilient than I thought. It's not to say that I haven't, suffered or experienced anxiety, but so has everybody. I I think we have to adjust a little bit our expectations. And let me explain. Before this whole pandemic thing, if I felt anxiety, I felt that the expectation was to resolve the anxiety by using my coping skills, right? So, no pandemic, experienced anxiety, resolve anxiety. That was all very reasonable. I don't think that's reasonable anymore. Now, because now it's experience anxiety, and I think we need to accept that anxiety because I think being involved in a global pandemic causes anxiety. I think that everybody is anxious, and
There's
I
no
think that it
workaround.
would be unreasonable to think that we would not be.
Mhm.
I know that's not easy, but I just want you to know that you're not alone. I wish that I had the answer,
Mhm.
not so much for you, Katie, but because I would steal it. Lisa's been giving me a lot of advice. Lisa has all of these
Tried.
ideas. Lisa, what advice have you given me to burn off extra energy over the last 6 weeks?
Well, what kind of advice have you been I've given you a lot of advice. I don't know how much of it you've taken. You've been trying to interact well, you've been trying to interact a lot more as possible with people, on social media or using Zoom and Facebook and everything else just to kind of get that interaction that you're craving. It's been very difficult. You can't really go out and sit in the, like you said, your main activity, your main entertainment, as far as I can tell, is sitting in a coffee shop so that you can chat up with strangers or the other regulars. Um, I think the best advice you probably received was to try to make new routines, to try to come up with new things that you find are enjoyable and also the advice that I've been taking, which was really helpful, was because everyone keeps giving me all this advice about, oh, this is the perfect time to redo your closets. Oh, this is the perfect time to, like, you need to use this time as some sort of advantage to accomplish all this stuff. And the best advice I got was, it's okay to just make it through. You don't need to accomplish anything. You don't need to do it. Just survive. I don't want to say survive because it sounds so negative, but just kind of survive, get through it, wait it out, hold tight, and don't feel so much pressure that you have to be accomplishing something or doing something or somehow better than you are.
I think the worst advice that you gave me was
Okay.
go for a walk. That is really good
It's
advice.
good advice. At least to get you different scenery.
It does, and I offer this advice all the time, and I tell people to please take it because I'm not using it. But sincerely, go for a walk around your neighborhood. I'm not saying that I have done it. I want to be honest. I don't like to go outside. I burn so easily, and plus I'm lazy. But I've talked to a lot of people that never went for walks that are really describing it as almost a biblical experience because they've never done it before. I have not quite gotten there, but Lisa was correct. I should do it. All right, let's pop up the next question. Thank you,
Okay.
Katie.
All right. And we have Gina Lewis saying, has anyone heard of TMS treatments?
I have not.
I think it's something
Transmagnetic
magnetic stimulation, right?
stimulation?
There
Is
is a
that
place. I have not had it done, and I don't personally know anyone who's had it done, but they do have a place here in Columbus that does it. It's relatively new. It's only been open for a couple of years. So unfortunately, no, I don't have really any information to share. I have not done it. I don't know anyone personally who's done it. The research looks very promising.
Gina, I'm very sorry that we don't have, I honestly believe that one of the best things that somebody in my position, in our position, can say is, I don't know, rather than make something up. The best advice I have for you is I know if you head over to psychcentral.com, they have research articles on it, and they have person first accounts of people who have done it. Yeah, first person accounts.
You're trying to think of person first language.
I know. I'm killing it today. I'm killing it today. So thank you so much, Gina. That's what we have. All right, next question, please.
All right. And Katie Spence is asking, I try to be a positive voice for mental illness, but sometimes I need to step away and focus on me. What tips do you have for self-care while being a mentor to others? Again, another good question. It's a lot of pressure, especially when people are looking to you to see, what should I do? What's next? Oh, you're this shining beacon. You're this paragon of success. It's a lot of pressure. It's really difficult.
There is, I could write a book on this.
I believe you have.
Because Because I agree with you, Katie. I want to be a positive voice for people living with mental illness. And I want to let people know that recovery is possible. But I get criticized a lot because they're like, well, you're making it sound fun. You're only bragging up the positives. And I'm like, I don't recall saying any positive. I remember saying that if treatment is available, recovery is possible. I remember saying that people can do it. I remember banding together. They're like, well, you never mention the negatives. So I start mentioning all the negatives and people are like, oh, you're such a downer. I mean, how can anybody hope to rise from the ashes when all you're talking about is the fire? This is my life. And this is what I want to get to. This is my life. And sometimes it's okay to bury your face in your hands, turn off your phone, and I'm getting ready to say, go see a movie.
And go see a movie in the living room.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm most fascinated about in our culture is cell phones. I love cell phones.
It's almost permanently attached to your face.
I do. I love my cell phone. And this is how I do most of my advocacy. It's how I post on social media. It's how I even upload blogs this way. And there are all these, I'm going to call them settings that allow me to control when it notifies me. Mm-hmm. And here, I'm going to tell you a secret. I use none of them. None of them. I let all of the emails come through 24/7. I never shut it off. This is on me. I know that people are constantly vying for our attention because we have something that they need and they want, and we're willing to provide it. And that makes us special and awesome. But listen, sometimes we need to turn off the phone. And whenever I say turn off the phone, somebody always says, I can't because of my kids. And I always say, your phone has settings where you can make it so only your children's phone calls come through. Only your wife's phone calls will come through, and anybody else will automatically go to voicemail. You can even go as far as to block texts and Facebook through certain times a day, but still let certain people come through. So I think that boundaries becomes an issue here. And whenever I say it's important to set boundaries, everybody thinks that I'm talking about setting boundaries for the people contacting me or us. I'm talking about us. Like, we have to set our own boundaries. We have to create the expectation that after 6 o'clock we're off, and on and on and on. And we're not so good at that because we want to throw on the cape and be the hero 24 hours a day. We don't want to take the weekend off because we think that something bad will happen. Listen, what kind of a support system would you be if you are frazzled and annoyed and angry and tired? And, I'm going to throw it over to Lisa, because Lisa has been the caregiver to me, the support system for me when she has been exhausted and tired. Yeah. And Lisa, how did that go?
Sometimes poorly.
Sometimes.
I think that is a good thing that you're saying there, and Gabe has said this many times in his speeches, that whole thing about how if you're on an airplane, you need to put the oxygen mask on your own face before you help those around you. And again, you can't draw from an empty well. It feels selfish, but it is very important to take care of yourself, because otherwise you're not going to be helping anyone. And it is also a lot of pressure because everyone looks to you as if you have all the answers all the time, as if you're not a regular person, as if you can't have bad days. And then they act like, hey, well, when you have a bad day, it's like you're personally, like it's personal, like you're personally trying to hurt them, or they're personally disappointed. And so I guess you saying with boundaries, maybe it's also more of an expectation, just letting people know the limits that you have and how much you are in fact able to give and how often it is you do need to step back.
I hate to admit it, but I expected when Lisa and I were married, I thought, well, you're my wife, so you have to be available 24/7. And it made things very, very bad. And Lisa and I got to the point where we didn't have our own lives. It was just this mesh of codependency. Now, I'm not saying that you're that way with the people that you mentor. I'm just saying that when Lisa started to say, look, on Wednesdays, I go to book club and you have to leave me alone for 2 hours, I think that improved things. Now, unfortunately, in this example, it ends with we got divorced So you don't want that to happen to you. Boundaries are certainly important. And in this day and age right now with the quarantine and the pandemic, sincerely, there's an off button. Turn it off, tell your family to leave you alone, and find something on Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, watch the whole thing, never check your phone, and just get through it. It will feel weird at first, but remember when it felt weird to see everybody wearing masks?
Yeah, that
Now
got
it doesn't
overcast.
feel weird at all. It's just like that. Thank you so much, Katie. That's like two Katies.
I know. For a second, I thought it might be the same person again.
Nope. All right. Okay. Next question.
All right. I do not know how to pronounce this name. Can people see the question on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I do not know how to pronounce this name. So just going straight to the question. I can't stop overthinking. I literally overthink about myself and end up doubting myself. I have been having so much of anxiety and hyper behavior. And we trailed off a little bit there. So I think the question is about overthinking. Yeah, I do that constantly. And then you can't let it go. Like it's like on this loop in your head. You think, oh, what I do, which is very annoying, and I wish I could stop. And as soon as my therapist gets back, I'm going to ask her about this, is where you just constantly repeat it on your mind over and over. And you're thinking about what could I have done? What could I have said? How could I have changed that? It's very frustrating. And it's so self-defeating because there's just nothing you can do. You're never going to be happy with
self-doubt, paranoia, chronic anxiety. They're all part and parcel of the same issues, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's just overthinking because you have so much free time, or even in the case of like bipolar disorder, it can be a manifestation of racing thoughts, and it causes all kinds of side effects. Staying up all night because you can't sleep because you're just ruminating on this over and over and over again. And what we want to do is break the cycle, and breaking the cycle is it's a difficult thing, and it takes a while to master. And even once you've mastered it, you're still going to fall into the same trap.
Sometimes.
One of the things that I do when I start ruminating on the same thing over and over and over again is I do my very, very best to remove the clutter. I am very good at, okay, Lisa asked me if her glasses look good. Okay.
They do.
So I'm looking at her glasses. All right. And then I'm like, well, what about the hair bun? Well, what about that light switch in the background?
I can't. I tried.
Well, what about the shirt? And when I realize that the initial question is, how do her glasses look? So now I start removing things from the equation. She didn't ask me about the light switch. She didn't ask me about her hair, and she asked me how her glasses looked. So I start to focus on that. Now I start to focus on facts. The fact of the matter is she is asking how her glasses look. She's not asking how she looks overall. She's not asking anything else. So now I become like ultra vigilant in what she actually asked. And I make sure that my follow-up questions to her, okay, Lisa, what are you asking? Are you asking, do they fit? Are you asking if the color looks nice on your face? Are you asking if there is a glare? And then I start getting feedback. And again, I keep it very narrow because it's really easy to expand. And I believe that ruminations and anxiety, what gets you is that expanse. Yeah. It starts off with what's for dinner, and it ends up with you're lazy and you can't feed your family. What hurts is that you can't feed your family. The what's for dinner is actually a very innocuous question. And you're right. Now you're handcuffed because you've tied together what you make for dinner with how much you love your family. Going back to the glasses thing, I've now tied together Lisa's glasses with her hair, her shirt, and her light switch. Once I realize that none of that other stuff matters and I can focus just on her glasses, that helps a lot. Sometimes I accomplish this by writing down so that I can cross out all of the other stuff. As you get better, you can just start doing this in your head. Finally, and I think this is important, in the example that I gave, I very intentionally used Lisa because I can ask Lisa for help. I can say, look, maybe I'm overthinking this, but what are you saying? Are you asking if your glasses match your shirt? And she's like, no, I'm not asking that at all. But here's the trick. This is very, very important. If you ask somebody, you must believe them. You must take them at their word.
That's harder than it sounds.
Yeah. If I say to Lisa, are you asking if your glasses match your shirt? And she says, no, I am not. That now becomes fact. I cannot say, well,
I kind of think that's what you were saying. Are you sure?
Yeah. Now that one's a little bit easy because it's Lisa's glasses and sure, but let's say that I was, let's say that it was the dinner thing. And I
Mm,
called up Lisa and said, I'm struggling what to cook for dinner because I believe what I choose for dinner determines whether or not I love my family. And Lisa says,
that's completely ridiculous. Why would you think that?
now that
Or,
becomes
or
fact.
actually, I take that back. The better thing that I should say is, why do you think that, Gabe? Address that concern. And then, of course, say, no, that's not true. What you cook does not, in fact, show how much you love your family.
And remember, that now becomes fact.
Mm.
I cannot say, oh, well, Lisa's wrong, because then that just
You have to
never
find someone you
ends.
trust.
You've got to find people that you trust. I'm very, very fortunate to have a best friend. Lisa really is my best friend. I'm very fortunate to have a loving wife. So obviously I can ask her a lot of stuff. I even have lots of good friends and family members. I'm very fortunate. I can still call my mom and dad and ask their opinion, and I can talk this stuff out with them. This is the best advice that I have, and then practice, 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 practice. This is something that a lot of people do work out in therapy, and therapy is very, very good for this kind of thing. I understand why you doubt yourself. It's something that I do as well.
Well, everyone
but
does.
I also want you to know that you don't need to, and that everybody, even if they don't have an anxiety disorder, even if they don't have paranoia, I believe that every single person on the planet at some point
Mhm.
has doubted themselves.
Oh,
There's a lot of
absolutely.
things that we as a society do that are very difficult, like raising children. I don't believe that there is a parent on the planet that hasn't doubted themselves when it comes to raising their kids. And this puts you in great company. It puts you in excellent company because we're all just trying to survive and lead our best life. So, please don't beat yourself up. Do you have anything to add, Lisa?
Um, I would just say that has been very helpful for me because I tend to do that too, where it just kind of snowballs into this whole thing by the time you get there. Is having people in your life that you can reach out to that you trust and you believe, and they'll get used to it if you do it enough until eventually they're getting to the point where they understand what words will make you feel better and what won't. So that has been helpful for me to reach out to other people just because that takes you out of your own head a little bit.
I cannot agree more. Thank you so much. All right. While the next question is being found and popped up, I want to give a shout out to Jackie Zimmerman. She has come to check us out. Kendall,
Aww.
or I said Kendall. Lisa,
Yeah.
wave at Jackie.
Yay. Hi, Jackie.
We
Thank you for
coming. All right. Next question.
Okay, another name that I'm not going to be able to pronounce, so I won't insult you by trying. May I ask for new ideas? What can I do for nights/weekends? Days have more resources besides calling/texting the suicide hotline numbers and coping skills to help when depression hits the hardest.
This is a great question. First, I want to say thank you for asking, and I want you to give yourself props for asking. You are actively looking for solutions, and that speaks volumes for how strong you are and how much effort you are putting into moving forward. And I think you need to give yourself a big, huge pat on the back for that. This is not meaningless. Asking for resources, asking for help, and admitting that you need help, these are not little things.
Yeah.
So big kudos to you. Thank you. Thank you. You are important, and we want you to be here. So the calling and the texting, the suicide hotline numbers, and learning coping skills, these are all very, very good things. I'm very, very glad that you're utilizing them. The resources that I have are, the Mighty is not a small website. PsychCentral.com is not a small website. I saw a joke the other day on Facebook. It was a little cartoon where somebody sat the remote down and said, "Okay, I finished Netflix." And
feels
of course,
that way sometimes.
Yeah, that's funny because you can never actually finish Netflix. There's way more content on Netflix than you can ever get through in a lifetime. And websites like The Mighty and PsychCentral.com are exactly like that. And people tend not to see them as coping skills, but they are. Reading positive things are solid coping skills. And listening to a certain podcast, Lisa, can you recommend any podcasts that might be helpful to keep your mind off stuff? I mean, do you know of any? I mean, just off the top of your head?
Just any that would just come to mind immediately? You should definitely be listening to the Psych Central podcast and Not Crazy, both available at psychcentral.com.
Where do you find the Not Crazy podcast aside
You
from your
find
favorite
that
podcast?
podcast at psychcentral.com/notcrazy.
I know that it's a shameless plug, and listen, you don't have to listen to the Not Crazy podcast, but
You totally do.
are
You totally
hundreds. There are hundreds of these podcasts, and I do believe that there is a podcast, a video, something for everybody. The forums over on psychcentral.com are, frankly wonderful. And this thing that you're doing right now, where you're watching us on the Mighty, that is something to do to get ideas, pass the time, and frankly, get a pep talk. I hope, if nothing else, people see that Lisa and we're positive, we're enthusiastic, and we believe in you.
Absolutely.
And I just,
anyone can get better.
Listen, that has a tremendous amount of value in my recovery. Mm-hmm. The greatest moment for me is when I saw in a support group, there was an older woman. Now I say she was an older woman because she was 35 and I was 25. Of course, now I'm 43. But she talked about her husband and her children and her house. Mm-hmm. And at that moment in time, I did not have a significant other, a house, or children. And I thought, oh, wow, she is where I want to be. And she lives with bipolar disorder. That means I can get there. If nothing else you take away, please know that there is a guy living with bipolar disorder and anxiety and a woman living with depression.
Yeah.
And we got married, we got divorced, and we remain friends, which is no small task. And of course, we managed major depression and bipolar disorder, which is no small task. And we are not that great.
Yeah.
So if we can do it, I believe that anybody can. So I strongly suggest all of those things. The final thing that I'm going to say is, Lisa does all this stupid stuff that I make fun of, like adult coloring books and puzzles.
I like puzzles. I just got a new one over the weekend, actually. It's OSU Stadium. It's going to take me a whole week.
I think that things that occupy our mind, they help slow down those intrusive thoughts. Finally, the last thing I want to say is listen, if it gets bad, please call 911, call for help. You are important, and we want to make sure that you're here in a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. All right, let's bop over to the next question.
Okay. All right. Priscilla Medina asks, why does yelling trigger my anxiety? Even if the yelling is not directed towards me, I shut down very easy. I can absolutely relate to that. I think it's about your past or childhood, or it reminds you of something, or it just makes you feel uncomfortable, and anytime you feel uncomfortable, you start to become anxious.
Lisa, this is a big one for you. I'm
really don't like
you
when
didn't
people
say
yell.
More. I come from a loud family.
It's creepy.
Go watch a sitcom, and the family that's just constantly yelling at each other, that's my family. We communicate in a series of screaming. And Lisa comes from a very quiet family. I swear they drink with like their pinky out. They're like, "Hello, mother. I was in
You're so classy."
today."
Yes.
And I'm joking on both sides. My family certainly communicates in more than just screaming, and Lisa's family is perfectly fine. But the base premise of my family yells, Lisa's family does not yell is very relevant. And when we first became friends, when we first got married, the first time Lisa came for Christmas and everybody was yelling, she's like, "Why are they yelling?" And she actually said to me, "Why is your family so angry?" And I think that's why it triggers your anxiety, because for Lisa, she associates yelling with anger.
Yes.
And she associates anger with potential violence.
Yes.
And that would scare anybody.
And when I saw this question, that was actually the first thing that popped into my mind was that first Christmas, because it was so nerve-wracking, because you're just waiting. You're waiting for something bad to happen. And nothing bad did happen. And Gabe assured me repeatedly that nothing bad was going to happen. These people were just yelling. They were not violent. But when you have that association in your mind, it's very hard to get over. And it was the very first thing I thought about when I got the question.
This, of course, never bothered me because I don't associate yelling with anger. I don't associate anger with violence, or I don't associate yelling with violence. So when I heard people yelling, I just thought they were emphatic. I thought it was either cheering on their sports team or looking for their iPod cable. I don't know. It did not bother me. And I think that's why. And I don't think that I don't think that Lisa is wrong, and I don't think that I am wrong. And I think that part of being around people is learning to maneuver those things. And we did. I told my family, I'm like, hey, we gotta tone it down. We have company. And it worked. And I don't think that you should feel bad. And one of the things that I regret, in the interest of full disclosure, I regret thinking that Lisa was wrong, because I did. I thought she was wrong.
Thank you, Gabe.
And it's important to realize that I was looking for a right and a wrong. And I think this caused a lot of problems because there wasn't a right and a wrong. Lisa was absolutely right, but so was I. And I think that if Lisa and I could have, had better communication skills and discussed it,
gone better.
Yeah, we would have realized that, okay, Gabe comes from a loud, exuberant family, and that's just their culture. And Lisa comes from a quiet, articulate family, and that's just their culture. And there's nothing wrong with either. And we need to be accepting of people. And if we would have learned that, Lisa could have adopted a when in Rome policy.
I did at the end, sort of.
Yeah, you did at the end, sort of. But sincerely, some of Lisa and I's biggest fight moments were looking for a right and a wrong where none existed. Yeah. Thank you so much, Priscilla. We really appreciate it. We are actually overtime. We used up an extra 1 minute and 19 seconds, 21
I need
seconds,
to get the clock like in the middle. I didn't even see that.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please, 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 please check out the Not Crazy podcast on your favorite podcast player. Head over to psychcentral.com/notcrazy and check it out. There's only one episode because we just went live today.
Yay!
Please send your feedback over to show@psychcentral.com. We will see everybody in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Bye.